We're going to talk about ORMs. They don't kill the database, developers do. My name is Guilherme Blanco. Anyone interested, you can grab, you can see my joining and make some comments there. I hope you like it. So if anyone is still taking a screenshot. Who am I? I'm actually a developer. Currently, I'm almost like a manager. I'm managing a team of 17 people. I work for InstaClick, which is mainly porn. Adult industry, I'm working on a platform that holds probably 27 websites, different websites, with an average of 20 million users, each one. And that's my GitHub account. I'm a contributor of anything that I can imagine regarding PHP. PHP, Symfony, Zen Framework, Doctrine, FFmpeg, anything that you can imagine, I probably have already contributed something. Mainly, I'm a freak about code. So I'm going to have another talk at a conference called Object Calisthenics Applied for PHP. So feel free to join, because it's a very good talk that's going to change your mindset about coding. It's very good. So if anyone likes to tweet, feel free. So we have a very long agenda. But if you can at least remember something when leaving, if you can only get 1 point from this talk, it's definitely read the fucking manual. Everything that I'm going to explain here is already inside of the Doctrine documentation. But the problem is, no one reads. People are lazy. I'm lazy. I hate reading. But that's something. So let's start with the basics. I'm trying to not rush. I gave this talk already like a couple of times. Everybody says like I'm very straight to the point, that I don't go like correctly. I don't like try to be smooth. So for the basics, we have a Doctrine class here. And then you define this one as an entity, and then you have an ID, and then you have a title, and then you have comments. Mainly what you have here is actually a primary key mapping, a column mapping, and association mapping. Everybody's fine with this? Who is not fine? Who is actually Propel and should be at the other talk? One guy. Cool. OK. At the same time, that I don't know if this is actually a very good talk, but if you see the Doctrine team, they're all set here. They're actually spying the Propel talk, what they should do later. Anyway, so first topic, dependency management. What I usually see every time that I look at the code is how this code is actually implemented. And for my surprise, usually I see different bundles, for example, a blog bundle and a comment bundle, and then you have blog post having a list of comments, and comment pointing to one post. So you're probably going to have a mapping, something like this, like post pointing to one to many comments, and then you have post mapped by post, and then you have inside of the comment, you have a many to one, and then you have inversed by comments, and there you go. The problem is, you have this dependency. And it means like you can never install your bundle without having the other. And the other can never be installed without the first one. So what happened is, this dependency is wrong. Why? So trying to install the blog without having a comment is just not possible. The right way should actually, you inverse the dependency, and actually you have blog not knowing about anything about the comment, but having the comment relying on the post. So you can actually install the blog without actually having a possibility for comments. That's all about reusability. So our final class would probably be something like this. And then you're going to only have a couple of problems to actually query. But we're going to see later that the query stuff is very powerful. So everybody's fine with this? Anyone have any questions? I like to be a little bit different. Like, if you have any questions, just raise the hand and ask. I don't understand anything that is said. No? No questions? That's good. So second topic, fetch mode. So basically, the fetching strategy is what the ORM is used to retrieve associated objects through and how they need to navigate through them. Currently, it's supported in all association types inside of the Doctrine, which means one-to-one, one-to-many, many-to-one, and many-to-many. And we have a couple of available fetch modes. They are eager, lazy, and extra lazy. I should put like super lazy or something like that, but they already changed inside of the JPA API, so I decided to just keep it. I like the name. Who here is extra lazy? I'm actually extra lazy. So for eager, it means like an association or a collection or attribute is fetched as soon as you decide to get the owner. For example, if you define the fetch eager inside of blog, which points to the comments, or inside of the comments that actually points to the post, every time that you decide to load a comment, it's going to automatically load the post. So it's going to execute another query during the hydration process to actually load the post. So people will say, OK, that's not very well performant. That's why we have the other two. So the second one is an association, a collection, or attribute that's fetched when the application needs to execute any operation over it. This is the default one that we have inside the Doctrine. So it means like every time that you decide to count, you decide to get the list, or that you try to access anything, then it executes the query, loads, and then you can actually execute. This is OK. And then we have the third one, which to me, it should be the default one. Like any individual element inside of the association is accessed straight from the database, and only when extremely needed, we actually reload them. So for example, if you have a bad architecture, and then you have posts, which points to comments, and then you decide to grab the list of comments, it's going to, or just decide to count the comments, it's going to not load the comment list. But it's going to actually execute a count query to actually return you the result. That's how it gets executed. So to me, this one should be the default. But it's going to be very hard to convince the guys that are all ghosts here. Anyway, so how we can actually implement the fetch modes inside of our entities? We have the classes. So post, which contains an author and a tag list. And then you see, like, for many-to-one, for the author, we have a user. And then we define this one as fetch eager. And then you have for tag list, it's a many-to-many. And then you define the fetch mode as extra lazy. And finally, you just have a one-to-many here inside the comment for post with fetch mode lazy, which is the default one. And then you can omit. But I just try to be very verbose here. But as I explained, the fetch eager, it's OK. So it executes another query. But it's almost what I consider as a deadly sign. Why? Suppose that your author, your user in the case, you also have other fetch eagers. And then every time that it tries to load the user, it's going to automatically try to load the other eagers. And then you're going to see that what's going to happen is you're just trying to fetch the comment, but at the same time, it's fetching for the user. It's fetching for possible comments, latest comments, and it's fetching a lot of things that are totally unnecessary to the query. That's why I tell most of people, do not do this one. Just don't do this. Never use it. Everybody's happy so far? Any questions? Go ahead.
Does it actually run a separate
No, it actually executes a separate query. It's during hydration. So actually you suffer an n+1 issue on this one. Any other question? Nope? Everybody, go ahead.
One use case for eager that you would approve?
If you have a one-to-one, and it's something very strict, for example, user that contains an address, and you can only have one address. So under this circumstance, you may want to actually get the address every time. Or, for example, every time that you try to fetch for a credential, and then you have a user. And that's something that Symfony needs to change, but I'm going to submit a pull request later. So credential which points to the user. So you can have multiple types of credentials, LDAP authentication, HTTP digest authentication, basic authentication, email authentication, and then you only have one user. For this idea, you actually want to fetch eager because your actual content, it's not a credential, it's actually the user. Answers your question? Any other one? Nope? OK, so let's move on. We have querying. People usually tell me, like, hey, querying is like SQL. That's intentional. That's not something like we are trying to reinvent the wheel. It's something that's intentional because it reduces the amount of time that you have to learn new things. Right? And I haven't written myself the entire grammar for this. Actually, we brought almost everything that they have already inside of the JPA. It's defined there. So why do I need to reinvent the wheel? They already specified this like 10 years ago. I would be just stupid, though. So anyway, let's just get an example. So how can I execute the query? So I create a query, I select the post, and then I get the list of posts. And then I iterate through all the posts, and I just decide to get the tag list. And then I just decide to get the name. Good? That's a very simple piece of code. What happens? You're going to suffer an n+1 issue here. So there are any trolls like, you should do that. So what's the actual point here? Every time that you try to execute and display the tag list regarding one post, it's going to probably execute a query inside of the tag list to fetch the tags, and for every post. So actually, if I have 10 posts, you are actually executing 11 queries here. And if you don't have eager, because you may be executing more. Okay? So how to solve this? So all you need to do, you just need to join the tag list. And then you may start like, OK, how powerful is this tool? I said, OK, you may all think like it's just not trust me. But let's try to take a look at the EBNF grammar. Yeah, it's big, I know. The letter size is 5, but some of you may still not believe me. So let's try like a real-world example. For example, do you know Facebook activity wall? So let's show it. This is the query, as soon as this decides to work. This is the query to fetch the activity wall inside of Facebook, converted to DQL. It's big, yes. It's unperformant, yes. But it does the job. So mainly what you have, you're trying to, you're going to have like 3 levels of queries, which is amazing. You should never do this at home, trust me. But anyway, we're just trying to entry that you wrote, and also the entry that was inside of your wall, or if the user is your friend, the friendship is approved and the subscription is not muted. And also, the group that you participate, it's not muted, and you have an approved status in the case that it's per invitation. That's the query. That's exactly what your timeline displays. So any questions regarding querying? Just try to join everything. Like, whenever you're going to need inside of the piece of code, just join. People say, oh, but this is not performant. But there's an R inside a relational database that they're meant to be joined. So you can have like hundreds of possibilities that you can actually optimize associations and how you index things. So that's not a task for the ORM tool to actually micro-optimize. It's your job. So you should know what you're doing. If you don't, you're misusing the tool. And then you're going to start blaming for N+1 issues, or it's just unperformant. And I see like hundreds of blog posts telling that tools are unperformant, ORMs are unperformant. ORMs are a complex tool, very complex tool. You're going to never write one alone, trust me. Even if you decide to write one as an exercise, it's going to never be as performant as an actual tool, because we have to go to micro-optimization instead of PHP. Any questions? Nope? Let's move on. So we have caching. This is a quick subject. Doctrine contains actually 3 levels of caching in 2.2, 4 levels of caching in 2.3. So the main ones are metadata cache, query cache, and result cache. What this means, the first one is the cache of the mapping of the entities. So if you execute, if you map your entities using XML, YAML file, annotations, this don't need to be parsed every time, over and over and over and over again. So the only thing that you can actually do, it's you parse once, you cache, and then you just reuse. That's what this cache is meant for. The second one is the cache that actually translates the DQL into a SQL. This one is very nice. And I just found out yesterday that it's broken. Yeah, we have a very small issue there that is actually not working if you use hint and etc. But we're going to fix. I already have an almost working patch. So the third one is the one that caches the PDO result set. It caches the raw response from the database table, right? The fourth one that we introduced, actually we changed it during the Doctrine 2 versions. We changed the third one to actually, it was caching the objects. And now it's only caching the PDO result set. And people start blaming us about that. So we reintroduced this one as hydration cache. Okay? So how does it work? How can I actually get the result cache? Because it's probably the biggest one, and it's what's gonna actually make your website perform better. So we just have a query, which is the wrong one if you're trying to get the tag list. And all you need to say is, hey, use the result cache, which means, yes, use it. There are more things inside of the first argument. But anyway, I just think like it's not necessary. So the second one is the amount of time that you want, and the third one is the key that you want to be stored. So you can actually remove the cache entry. And there are only 2 problems that we have inside of the computer science that's just unsolvable. First one is naming things. The second one is cache invalidation. So just try to use wisely this one, and then you're going to actually get a very good thing. So, and then you finally just get result, and then it's going to execute the first time, it's going to cache the first time, and all the other ones, you're just going to retrieve the cache one. Go ahead.
What happens if I have a false argument as the first?
I don't remember actually what's the purpose of the first. It's actually I think you can specify another cache driver. So true is the default one that you have mapped. I think it's this one. I'm not 100% sure. Sorry, I'm mainly the guy that actually controls all the DQL support. Any other question? Just raise your hand and say, people, you're so shy. Trust me. OK, so next argument. Indexing. A relational database, it's not a good relational database if they don't have index. And MongoDB introduced this one only at version 2, I think. Yeah. So, Jeremy, can you actually, yeah. Way earlier? I don't know. I don't know anything about ODM. I don't touch that code. It's something about web scale and web 2.0 or something. I don't know. I tried to download the other day and it didn't work. Anyway, indexing. So indexing is an ability to hint for the schema tool that you actually want to generate database indexes for specific table columns. Yes, we have issues on this one. Yes, I'm working on patches for this one because my environment is very huge and I need to rely on indexes a lot. But let's go. We have unique constraint that you can actually define unique indexes. And then you can also have other indexes that are normal ones. So for this table, specifically for this class user, you have a table called users. And then you say, hey, I want the username to be unique. And then it's going to actually generate a unique index for you. And the second one, you say, hey, I want to index by the name and the password so I can actually fetch easier and faster. I'm not in the merits of actually speaking about indexes. You should all know, you should read documentation. I know that's the first thing that I mentioned, read the fucking manual. That's exactly what you have to do. Every time that you need a feature, research for it. Learn it. That's how it works. So, for example, for the unique constraint, it's not going to actually generate this SQL query. You're going to create a unique index. And for the second one, you're going to just generate an index with the name that you actually have. The point is, why I have defined the name? Because database sucks. That's the overall thing that you can actually remember. All the database, they change their implementation. Like someone probably just have like a bad day or a bad sleeping, and they come up in the morning and say, hey, let's fuck with something. That's what they do. For example, some drivers, they only accept 32 characters here. And then if you have like 2 entities and you try to auto-generate them, and that's back to the Doctrine 1, it's going to generate a concatenation between the first table and the second table, and then you have a long name that's more than 32 characters, and then you're going to suffer. And we have like hundreds of issues that were reported at that time. Anyway, any question? Just raise a hand. I can help you if you want. Like. OK, that's trivial. So inheritance. Inheritance is a very, very, very deep topic inside of an ORM. It's not easy. Through ORMs, they implement the 3 possible ones. And each inheritance, they actually have their advantage and disadvantage. So you need to understand them and actually use them in the right way for your needs. We are not at the stage that we can actually, inside of, as ORM developers, to just say, hey, you should use this one. No, it depends on every single use case. So which are the available ones? It's the concrete table inheritance, single table inheritance, and class table inheritance. You probably have no idea about these names, so I'm going to help you. So the first one, it means one class, one table. The second one means multiple classes, only one table. And the third one is like an RG, multiple classes, multiple tables, and etc. So if you're considering to use inheritance, I'm going to tell you, avoid as much as you can. Inheritance at any language is very bad, unless you have a very good reason. Try composition. Okay. So for concrete table inheritance, if you need to sit down and write it, there are pros. So one of the biggest ones, you don't have too much lock-in problems. The second one, you have no irrelevant columns. And the cons is actually it's very difficult to deal with primary keys. Why? You may have inside of your entire mapping, you may have like person, user, employee, manager, for example. I'm going to stick with this example because it's actually valid for all of them. It means like every single table, every single class, you're going to have all the columns that you have inside of the entire inheritance. This actually is very bad because whenever you try to fetch for person, then you're going to have a huge problem. Whenever you try to insert, you're going to have IDs all over the place, and they can collide, and that's bad. It's just bad. But there are use cases for this one. Actually, there are use cases for all of them. That's why they exist. And the second part is searching inside of the base class means searching at all tables, which means union. This is not 100% supported inside of the Doctrine because it's just unperformant most of the times. Okay? And the last one is updating a column means updating all the hierarchy tables. Yes. So how do you map this one? Maybe you just map a superclass. And then every time that you want to extend, you can actually get it. So if you have a user and you have a person, this table, it's going to actually be generated something like this. Right? Any question? No? So the second one is called single table inheritance. I told you that you're going to be shaking the camera every time. I'm going to try to stand, OK? So for single table inheritance, you have pros. First one is actually you only have one table for the entire hierarchy. The second one, you have no joins. The third one, refactoring a field means no change to any database table. For example, moving around one column back and forth inside of the hierarchy. As a cons, means like you're wasting space inside of the database. And in specific case of MySQL, you're doing a very bad job. But in the case of Oracle, you're OK, because they can actually optimize the amount of things, the amount of space that they have. So they don't have waste of space. So you may have too many locks because of a lot of access that you may have. And the third con is actually you're just unable to duplicate the field names inside the hierarchy. So it's just not possible to have first name with a varchar of 50 and the other one a first name with a varchar of 100. Because they have if they have different meanings, it's just not possible because you only have one table. So how can you actually map this one? You have the class user, which is actually people. The table name is people. And then you say, hey, my inheritance type is single table. And then you rely on another column that we call as discriminator column to tell, what the hell are you? And then it's actually, what do you actually use it? So this column is called this is a type of string. And then you define, hey, I'm going to have these values, user and employee, and they are actually mappings for these classes, my app entity user and my app entity employee. So whenever you actually have something else, for example, I have the user, and then you also have the employee. And suppose that I have first name, last name inside of the user, and then I have row inside of the employee. So you're going to probably have a table something like this. OK? Any questions?
Yeah. Can the user class be an abstract class?
Yes. Yes, you can use.
That you couldn't have like an abstract class and then a direct inheritance from that.
From this one? You mean the first one to be an abstract?
Say the class user was named class animal, and you had class dog and class cat.
Yes, you can have it. Yep.
Okay.
As long as you map the discriminator map to not have it, like animal, because it's just not possible in object-oriented code, then you are actually fine. Any other question? Nope? OK. So the third one, class table inheritance. This one I like a lot. So it's easy to understand. also, you have a database space optimization in the case of MySQL due to the table normalization. The third one, it's you have a direct relationship between your domain model and your database. But nothing's all flowers. You may also have cons. And the cons means you have too many joins. And trying to refactor any fields, they actually didn't imply a database update. It's like 100% of the time. And if this superclass is accessed a lot, it may enter in the lock mode. Okay, so how can you actually map this one? You have an entity, and then you just say, hey, my inheritance type is joined. And then I have discriminator column to be this. It's a string of length 20. And then you define the map of the possible values that you have inside of this column. So this example is almost identical to this one, except that I just defined the length here, and I just changed the inheritance type. So switching between inheritance types, they are very easy in the code. They are very hard in the database. So what's actually the table that this one generates? So it's going to probably generate 3 queries, 3 statements that you're going to execute. The first one is create the table user. The second one is you're going to create the table employee. And the third statement is actually a constraint that actually implies that the ID actually is the same ID as the user. OK? Any questions so far?
Can you have multiple levels of inheritance to do that?
No. Just one. We are working on that. We have plans to fix this, but not at the next version. We already have a very large scope to finish.
Sorry. Does the inheritance has to be defined on the topmost class of the hero?
Yes, they always have to be defined at the top level class. That's why I have inside of the user and not inside of the employee.
But that limits the ability to extend an entity from different bundles.
Yes.
I've noticed your first slide there, you said that it's not good, but
Yes.
in reality, it has a requirement.
Yes, and we also have a pull request from one guy that wants this one to be dynamic. I don't know if it was already merged, but we were discussing internally. It's like, what's the other possibility that you can have? You need to load all the classes that you have inside of your schema and know what's going on and know which class actually extends from this one, because PHP, it's horrible about reflection. And then you can actually tell, hey, this class actually is an inheritance of this one and this one and this one. So it's actually a file system discovery. Like, that's the only possibility that you can have. So that's why currently, if I recall correctly, I don't know if we already merged the patch. That's the only way that you can actually do. It's bad? Yes, it's very bad. But that's the only possibility that you can have inside of PHP. We're trying to solve PHP problems here. That's the problem. That's the actual fact. Okay. Any other? Someone also raised the hand. It was you?
No, I answered.
Okay. Anyone else? Nope. So you're going to say, what's actually the problem with inheritance? It's called hydration. Why? Because there are certain places that it's just unable, and that's object-oriented issues, you're just unable to actually know what's going on. For example, if I have x1, for example, in the case of the blog post and comments, suppose that the blog post is actually an inheritance. It's part of an inheritance. And then I decide to load, and I have the comment that actually points to the blog post. So if you try to fetch this information, you don't actually know what's going on. And it's going to probably automatically try to load, even though you haven't requested to load, even though you have like fetch extra lazy. Why? Because it's just not possible. Like you can know what you have at the other side. You can generate a proxy class to actually place inside of the other side because you just don't know what you have at the other side. You may have the top level class like the user. You may have a more specialized class like employee. So you're forced to actually load that entity. The second point is the owning side of 2.1 inside of the inheritance. Sorry, I misused one example. The blog post and the comment is actually this one. The inverse side of 2.1, it means like user and address, and then you have 1-to-1. And then the other side, user is actually, you try to fetch for addresses, like which means Paris, and then you try to get the users. In this example, it's going to automatically fetch the user because you don't know if it's a user or an employee. This is the exact example of the blog post. And then you also have the third one, which means if you go while query, you just define a hint called defer eager load. OK? Any question for this? This is very complex. No one understood, probably. Who don't understand, just raise the hand, I can get back. Everybody understood? That's amazing. OK, the first one, suppose that we have user, which you may have an inheritance, so user, employee, and manager. OK, and the other side you have address. And then you have each user contains points to an address, and an address also refers to a user. Bad design, but you actually may have this situation. So every time that it's just decide, since the user ID is what you actually have inside of the database, instead of the address, whenever you try to fetch the address, it's going to automatically load the user. It's going to execute one query. Why? Because you just don't know what you have from the other side. You just don't know if you actually have a user, if you have an employee, or if you have a manager. It's object-oriented issue. It's not ORM issue. This one is fine? OK. The second one is the exact situation of blog posts and comments. So we have a suppose that blog post is actually part of an inheritance, like article, and then you have a specialized version, which is actually the blog post. And then you have comments, which actually points, each comment points to the post that it was in. Every time that you try to fetch for the comments, and then you try to, you just query for the comments, you don't know what to have from the other side. You don't know if it's actually an article or if it's an actual blog post, because you are inside of an inheritance. So what's going to happen? Every time that you fetch for the comments, it's going to automatically fetch for the users. For the blog post. Right? Because you just don't know what you have from the other side. You may have any class inside of the hierarchy. So it's going to automatically load the other side. Again, not an ORM tool issue. It's object orientation issue. You can solve that. And the third one, it's whenever you are querying things, you have an ability to actually, all the fetch eagers, you have an ability to actually tell, hey, just defer this execution. And and then it's gonna act as lazy. And if you have, even if you have defined as defer eager load, but you have an inheritance at one side of the association, it's gonna say, hey, you know what? Fuck off. I'm going to still load the content, load the association, because you just don't know what you have. You can't load up. The actual problem comes to the proxy. PHP sucks at interceptors functionality, which is a feature that you have in Java, you don't have in PHP. So you just can't create like an instance of the user proxy, which is just a reference to a user, if it's actually not a user, it's actually a manager. You just don't know what you have. So you're forced to ignore, even though you pass a hint to actually defer. This one makes sense? Okay. Any question? No? Okay. So Cascades. Cascades is what you have an ability to tell the unit of work how they should act when inspecting for the association changes or graph. So my general advice to this one, think before writing any cascade. You may think, why? This is actually, I'm telling you to think like over and over and over. If you think like 5 times before you write a cascade, it's probably the average amount, half of what I think it's actually necessary to actually place something. Why? Because it heavily increases the amount of nodes that the change set algorithm needs to navigate. So it's going to slow down your entire application. Entirely, not only certain center parts. So, but you may still have valid use cases. So that's why we have the feature. And what are the available cascades that we have? We have persist, delete, merge, detach, and refresh. So what does it mean? What does each one means? It means like every time that you have a user and you also have a comment, every time that you are persisting any change inside of the user, it's going to automatically get this one and try to inspect what's going on inside of the comment, the list of comments. And you may have a new comment there. Then you're going to automatically update or insert the comment. Okay, makes sense? Yes? Yes. Okay. Any question? No? Okay. Probably the last subject that we're going to cover. It's called Hydrators. Everybody decides to migrate from the legacy application to the new one. They need to write a migration script, and then they run out of memory inside of the PHP process. Every time. Why? Because you're trying to create too many objects. That's a PHP problem, not an ORM tool issue. Again, we try to solve something complex, but the language does not help us. And if you actually you look at my comments inside of internals, probably the developers, the internals developers, they probably love me. If I meet any of them, I'm going to be murdered. Anyway, hydrators. So Doctrine comes with some of very useful hydrators, but you can still write yours if you actually want. But you're going to think like, instead of 5 times for a cascade, this is probably like at minimum 1,000 times for this one. So this means that not all the time you can retrieve an object. You may also want to retrieve anything different. For example, an object, an array, a scalar value. You want to iterate and load on demand. You just want only one object, or you only want one single value. So how can you actually obtain and define to the query that you actually want this hydration to be executed instead of the other one? It's all about API. So for object, it's the normal one get result. For array hydration, you actually want get array result. For scalar, it's probably very hard. It's get scalar result. So the other one is iterate. This one is actually the most complex one. And there are some restrictions inside of this one. And iterating, when you actually have joins, it just don't work. It's just not possible because you're trying to iterate through only one row while actually you may have joined a lot of things. And only one entity that you want to retrieve here is actually maybe a composition of multiple rows. That's database issue. That's not our fault. Okay? So the API for the single object is get single result. And the other one is also very hard, is get single scalar result. So now I think we're done. So do you have any questions? Any other questions? Just raise the hand, people.
So in your advice, there was this cancel disconnection from post to comments. My question is that if you would like to delete then the post, you have those leftovers of comments in the database, or is there some logic that will remove automatically?
Yes, it's gonna. If you define the cascade remove, it's gonna automatically remove the
but
comments.
You have to define it in a post, or you have to define it in the comments?
You have, depends of where you have an association. It's normally the best place that you can actually place, it's the on inside, which means if the comment points to the post, it's probably the comment the best place that you can actually put, right?
Yes, so if you remove the post, will it know that there is a cascade in the comments?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other question?
I missed the part for listener.
Sorry?
So I missed the part for listener in your talk.
Listeners.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't spoke about listeners because of time restrictions. My general advice is listeners are good, but the problem is it's going to be executed for all entities. So either you actually have a very good use case, or it's better that you don't use it. Okay, that's my general advice. Answers your question? Yes. Okay, any other question? No? No? I hear someone? No? Okay, so thank you guys.